If you guys could turn with me to Joshua chapter 3 this morning. Joshua chapter 3. And this is going to be somewhat of a continuation of what we've been hearing the last couple weeks, because God just won't let this thing off of me. He won't let me let this thing go. There's something about his presence. Something about his presence that he just won't let me shake. Something amazing about the presence of God that I don't know if y'all have ever been here before. I don't know if y'all have ever experienced this before. But just when you're going through something tough, when you're experiencing something hard, and then you go into your prayer closet. You hop in your car. You go into your quiet place, your private place, and you experience the presence of God. And something happens where it seems like those problems don't even exist. Maybe it's just momentarily, you know that you're still going to have to take that phone call at the end of the day. You still know you're going to have to show up to that appointment later on in the afternoon. You still know you're going to have to pay that bill at the end of the week. But it's something about being in the presence of God that just makes you feel at ease, like nothing else even matters. For those of you who have children, and I'm thankful that we got a bunch of children in the building this morning. A bunch of the kids, y'all just wave at me. I'm glad to see y'all this morning. But it's something about being around children, and even if you don't have kids, just being around children in that moment where they experience something frightening, where they experience something crazy. Say you're walking with them in the park and a dog runs up and they start screaming and they grab hold of you and they're trying to climb up your leg. And it's that feeling that we get in the presence of God, where it's just like, if you're with me, I'm good. If you can just pick me up in your arms away from the danger, then I know that I'm going to be all right. And this morning, for a title, I just want to use God's presence is greater than your problem. God's presence is greater than your problem. And I hope somebody this morning believes that God's presence is greater than your problem. In Joshua chapter 3, let me just give you a brief summary even before we read where we're really going this morning. In Joshua chapter 3, as we've been talking about in the last few messages or so. So in Joshua chapter 1, God meets Joshua, and they're on their way to the promised land. Y'all listen to me on this. They're on their way to the promised land, but on their way to the promised land, God makes them a promise. And he says, I'm going to take you into a promised land. There's a place flowing with milk and honey. There's a place where you're going to be thriving, where you're going to be flourishing, where you no longer have to look over your shoulder. You won't have to be paranoid anymore. All right, there's a place that I'm taking you to that has everything that you've ever wanted. But on the way to the promised land, I am making you a promise. And my promise, and I've said this before, my promise is not that you won't experience problems. My promise is that I will never leave you. My promise is that I'll be with you en route to the promised land. I have to say this, because what good is the promised land without the promise? That might make sense to some of y'all, but I'll explain it. What good is the promised land without the promise? Even Moses said this. He said, if you don't go with me, then we don't want to go. If you're not in the promised land, then I don't want to be in the promised land. If you're in Egypt, then that's where I want to be. If you're in the land of Canaan, then that's where I want to be. But wherever you are, that's where I want to be. I want to be where your presence is. Because wherever your presence is, that's where I know I won't have to worry. That's where I know I won't have to feel anxious. That's where if I have a problem, I know I have somebody I can run to with the problem. It's similar to this. When you get engaged, when you're about to get married, you get a ring. You get an engagement ring. And that engagement is a promise, essentially. It's a promise that you have me, that I am committed to you, and that there's a day coming that we will get married, which marriage is the promised land, right? So you have a promise that I am committed to you, that I am with you, though we've not gotten to marriage, the promised land yet. But again, I say, what good is the marriage if I don't have your promise? Y'all hear me this morning? What good is me being married if you're not committed to me? I would almost much rather you be committed to me and we don't get married than for me to get married and you not be committed. And so essentially what's happened in Joshua chapter 1 all the way through verse 3 is he's saying, I'm taking you to the promised land, but on the way, I just need you to know that I'm the most important thing in this process. That if you have me, even apart from the promised land, and I'm talking to y'all this morning, and some of you, so far you might feel like, all right, this is a decent message, but maybe this is not for me. Trust me, this is for everybody. Because some of you have something in mind that you're like, God, I need you to do this. God, there's something that I'm working on that I need you to fulfill. God, there's an area of my life that I need you to come through on. God, there's something that you've promised me that I've not seen quite fulfilled just yet. God, there's a pain going on in my body that I've not been healed from yet. God, I'm believing for a family member and I've not seen it quite manifest yet. And what he's saying is, yes, there is a promised land. There is something that I want to do for you. But in the meantime, I need you to know that the promise is more important than the promised land. The promise is more important than the healing. The promise is more important than the manifestation. The promise is more important than the money. The promise is more important than you getting that raise or you getting that promotion. Because the promise is, I am with you. So even if I am with you and you feel like you have nothing, you actually have everything. Because God plus nothing equals everything. God is the majority in every situation. I hope y'all are hearing me this morning. So the gift wasn't in the promised land. The gift was them having his presence. This is what's happening in Joshua chapter 3. And I can actually read something so y'all can see this. In Joshua chapter 3, and I'm going to skip around in this. And it says in verse 2, so after 3 days that the officers went through the camp and they commanded the people saying, when you see the Ark of the Covenant, which we've already talked about in the last few messages, it represents the presence of God. It says, when you see the Ark of the Covenant of God and the Levites bearing it, then you shall set out after that place. He basically said, when you see it, when you see the presence of God, follow after the presence of God. And then Joshua says in verse 5, he says, and he said to the people, sanctify yourselves, for tomorrow you will see wonders. I've been telling y'all this. In this season to come, things are changing right before our very eyes. This year, this 2020, with the virus, with racial tensions, with economic crisis, I can almost guarantee you that this did not catch God by surprise. This is not something that he's twiddling his thumbs and his fingers trying to figure out, okay, what are we going to do? Holy Ghost, Jesus, let's come together. Let's have a huddle. What are we going to do? We got to come up with an audible. We got to create another plan because I didn't see this coming, right? He's not frantic. This is not something that caught him by surprise. He knows what he's doing. But what I need to let you know about, and I need to give you foresight about what's coming, this season that is coming, things are changing right before our very eyes. And in this verse is a revelation that God gave me as foresight as what's to come. As to say, when you see this revival that's about to hit the earth, when you see this move of God that has actually already started happening under the surface, but we haven't seen it with our physical eyes yet, when you see it start happening, I need you to follow after it. I need you to jump in. This is not one of those situations where you need to be sitting back asking questions. I don't know. But this is what he gave us right here in verse 5. He said, sanctify yourselves, for tomorrow God will do wonders. Essentially what he said was, I need you to separate yourself from sin. I need you to create space from the things that have been distracting you, the things that have been frustrating you. And I need you to get in your private space with me so that you can become sensitive to the presence of God. Because what's the revival that's about to hit the earth, the only people that are going to be sensitive to it are the people that have created that space between them and sin. The people that have sanctified themselves, the people that have been walking in holiness. And I said this over and over. It does not mean that you are perfect. It means that you are walking in purity. It means that when you make a mistake, you own up to it. It means that if you do something wrong, that you're quick to correct it. That is walking in holiness. That is being sanctified. It's not about what you put on. It's not about what you wear. It's not about your cologne. It's not about your fragrance. It's not about putting on a show for people. Because you can be funky, you can be dirty on your skin, but then you can put on nice clean clothes, and what happens to those clothes? Now they're dirty because it's on a dirty body. I don't care how you look on the outside. It's all about purity on the inside. This revival that's about to hit the earth, what God is saying, when you see it, follow after it. Y'all heard that in the previous messages, but we're going to dig a little bit deeper right here. In verse 14, this is the part where they're actually about to cut through the Jordan. All right? The Jordan, the water is in front of them. And this is the part where they're about to go through the water. In verse 14, in Joshua chapter 3, verse 14, it says, "So it was when the people set out from their camp to cross over the Jordan with the priests bearing the Ark of the Covenant." Again, the Ark of the Covenant just represented the presence of God. "And those who bore the ark came to the Jordan, and the feet of the priests who bore the ark dipped on the edge of the water, for the Jordan overflows all of its bank during the whole time of harvest. That the waters which came down from the upstream stood still and rose in a heap." Essentially what happened was, as they were carrying the presence of God, just as the tip of their toe touched the water split. The flow of the river from the top stopped. It was breached, and it created a wall, a barrier where all of the water stopped right then and there. In verse 17, "Then the priests who bore the Ark of the Covenant of the Lord stood firm on dry ground." Somebody say dry ground. They stood there on dry ground in the midst of the Jordan, and all of Israel crossed over. Everybody crossed over. This is the amazing thing that I saw in this. It said that as they stepped into the water stopped, right? If you can imagine, it created a barrier, just a barrier of water. If you can imagine just water standing up erect, almost like when you go to an aquarium and you see a stained glass window that is clear that you can see through, but you can see everything in the water. Water just shooting up on both sides as they're walking through the middle. And it says that they walked across on dry ground. Y'all hear me on this, because this is something that I really hadn't paid attention to. They walked across on dry ground, but they were surrounded by water. And I couldn't help but think, I wonder how many people in this season feel like they're in a dry place. Like, God, why are you allowing all of this bad stuff to happen to me? God, why are you allowing this situation? Why am I feeling so much frustration? Why am I experiencing so much pain? And you feel like you're in the wilderness. You feel like you're in a dry spell season in your life, when God is probably sitting there looking at you like, do you not see what you're surrounded by? Do you not see that you're flourishing in every single area, everywhere around you? Do you not see the miracle even in the middle of your mess? Do you not see that you're walking right in the middle of it? Like, how dare you complain when everything that you've asked me for, I've clearly provided, and you don't even see it? I think it's interesting because in the verses that came before that, he said, when you see the presence of God, follow after it. But I can imagine that there's some people in this season that don't see it. They don't see the presence of God because their attention is on the opposition. Their attention is on the problem. The title of this message is God's presence is greater than your problem. I can imagine that there's a lot of people this year that are focusing on the problem more than they're focusing on God's presence. They're seeing the dry land. They're seeing the water shooting up on the sides, but they're not seeing the Ark of the Covenant. They're not focused in on God's presence. How many people the presence of God is moving? It said when you see the presence of God, follow after it. Right? It's going to be moving. It's going to be a move. This revival is going to be a move of God. And this is the thing that concerns me, is that some people are going to be left behind. That some people are going to fall away. That some people are going to be distracted by their problems. That they're going to be looking at the dry ground complaining, God, why did you dry this up? Why did you take my resources? Why don't we have anything to eat? That people are going to be looking at the barrier of water and going to be looking at the fish behind the water and saying, wow, this is crazy. Because he said tomorrow you're going to see wonders. They're going to be looking at everything happening and they're going to say, oh, wow, this is amazing. Look at the hand of God. Look at these miracles. And they're going to get so caught up in his hand that they're going to miss out on his presence that's continuing to move. You ever been following in somebody in y'all's car and they get a little bit too far ahead of you to where you lose them or they lose you? Where they're so far ahead where they made a turn and you don't even know where they turned, right? And it's similar to that, where we're following after the presence of God, but if we're focusing on everything else around us, we won't see that he moved, right? And we'll get left behind. His presence is greater than our problems. I don't care what you're experiencing. And I don't mean to sound harsh. And matter of fact, let me rephrase that. It's not that I don't care, that I'm not compassionate or empathetic. It does not matter what you are experiencing. If you have the presence of God, then that is all you need. That is all you will ever need, is the presence of God. Because if you understand that if you're following after the presence of God, the presence of God actually envelops and has everything that you could ever ask for. Because the byproducts of his presence, we shouldn't get caught up on. We shouldn't get caught up on, oh God, thank you for this promotion, and now I'm focused on running after money. All right, God, I thank you for blessing me with this marriage, and so now I'm focused on pleasing my spouse more than focused on pleasing God, right? I shouldn't get caught up on, oh man, I lost my job, and so how am I going to provide? And now you're becoming anxious, and now you're frantic, and now you're weary instead of focusing on the presence of God, because that's where your provision came from in the first place. But being able to focus in on the presence of God so that we're not distracted. This is another amazing thing I saw in this. He said, sanctify yourselves because tomorrow you'll see wonders. He said, create space, distance between you and sin. The things that will distract you from being able to be sensitive to my presence. I don't know if y'all know this, but sin is the main issue that keeps us from God. Sin is the thing that created that space between Adam and God, between Eve and God, and how sin ended up entering the world. This is the very thing that separates us from God. And so it's no surprise to me that the word sanctify actually means create space, to create distance, to separate yourself, to be holy, separating yourself from sin. This is the other thing that got me though. He says, sanctify yourselves because tomorrow you will see wonders. And I had to look up the word wonders in the original context of the Greek or the Hebrew language, and I was surprised at what I saw. I saw that it actually means the same thing. It means to separate, to create space. And essentially what he was telling them was, I need you to sanctify yourself before I can sanctify you. I need you to create distance for yourself before I can create distance for you. I need you to want holiness for yourself before I can make you holy. I need you to desire my presence before I can give you my presence. I need you to want to follow after me before I can just grab you and pull you where I'm going, because I won't bully you into my presence. You have to want it for yourself. So he's saying, I need you to sanctify yourself. I receive it. I need you to desire me for yourself. I need you to want me more than you want anything else. And then when you do it for yourself, then you will see wonders. Then you'll see the separation. Then you'll see promotion. Then you'll see glorification, because whatever you focus on will be magnified. Whatever you give attention to, that's what you'll begin to see more of in your life. Let me give you a natural example. If you're looking at upgrading your vehicle and you say, man, you know what? I want to get a Range Rover. And you start going online, you start looking at the prices, you start looking at colors, you start figuring out if you want a sunroof or not, if you want tinted windows, what size wheels you want on it, and you start really digging into the details of it, and that's that you fix your attention on that thing. You even got a vision board and you put the picture up and you're looking at it every day. That's what you desire. I guarantee you that as you start driving around the city, you'll start noticing Range Rovers everywhere. You get a new car, even if it's a car that you didn't necessarily want. Once you get that car, you start noticing that same car almost everywhere, right? Because what you focus on is magnified. What you give attention to, you begin to see more of. What are you saying, Pastor Ty? That if I focus on the presence of God, then I begin to see the presence of God in everything. So regardless of what I face, when I step into a situation that doesn't look favorable, I say, well, I got the presence of God with me. I see the presence of God in this situation. Even though it doesn't quite look like that it's working out in my favor, I know that ultimately it's going to work out for my good. I know that all things work together for those that love the Lord according to his purpose. So if I'm following after the presence of God, how can I go wrong in any situation? How can any situation not work out for my good? If I am. So when we see these wonders begin to start happening in the world, I'm telling y'all things that are about to start happening. When we see wonders start happening in the world, what I'm telling you is this is a sign of God that he is beginning to separate. He is beginning to weed out. He is beginning to remove the people who don't desire him. And he's going to take the remnant of people that have his heart, and that's who revival is going to come through. Revival is starting on the inside. Revival is not, hey, let's put together a program, and on these dates we're going to have these musicians and this band and this preacher from out of town so that we can say we had revival. Revival is not a 1 week thing that we had a good services back to back to back to back and then we just went back to our daily schedules. Revival is ongoing. Revival is an inward change. Revival is something happened on the inside and it became contagious and spilled out into the streets. Revival is what's about to happen, but it is starting with those that are creating separation for themselves. And then God will come in then and say, okay, let me take that remnant that has separated themselves, that has presented themselves wholly to me. Let me take that remnant, and now I'm ready to introduce revival to the world. But you're only going to be sensitive to the presence of God if you have created that space. This week, I'm going to end on this note. This week, I told y'all last week that I'd made a conscious effort to go out of my way to sanctify myself. And let me be careful how I phrase this, because I don't want y'all to walk away thinking that we are holy in and of our own power, that we can just go and do things to make us holy in God's eyes. That's not what I'm saying. But sanctification is the process or is the act of purification. It is me saying there's something in my life that is keeping me from walking in purity. So let me take the initiative in removing that cancer, if you will, from my life, that thing that is eating away at my spirit. Let me take the initiative to remove that thing so I can continue to walk in purity, right? That's what that is. And so last week I asked you guys, and I'm not going to ask you who did it, and I'm not going to ask you what you did. But last week I challenged all of you. I said, I need you to find something that you do on a regular basis that's been taking your attention away from God, or something that's been frustrating you. Something that every time you encounter it, every time you go around this person or this situation, every time it gets you frustrated or it causes you to act out of character. Now, what I want you to do is, if you can at all possible, separate yourself from that thing. Or every time that you're about to get frustrated, I need you to fast. And essentially, I'm going to turn down my meal. I just noticed that I got frustrated. I just noticed that I act out of character. So let me turn down my meal and let me pray, right? So I can act on sanctifying myself. So I can be involved in the process of me removing something that is causing frustration or creating space between me and God. All right? And that's what I've been doing this week. Last week I told y'all I wasn't going to watch the NBA playoffs. James, it was tough. It was tough. And I know for y'all that, for y'all, I'm not saying y'all as in ladies, because I know a bunch of y'all ladies, y'all in the sports too. But I'm saying for some of y'all might be thinking like, nah, that really ain't no big deal. Like, I don't really watch sports like that. Or some of y'all that are into sports kind of like, that's kind of whatever. For me, that was a big deal. I can easily stay up till 1, 2 o'clock in the morning watching a good game, and it's nothing. And still wake up at 6 o'clock in the morning, because Tyler wakes up at 5:30, 6 o'clock in the morning, every single morning. I could easily do that, and it doesn't faze me, because that's something that I'm passionate about. I went a step further. I didn't watch football this week. NBA playoffs, college football, NFL football, and on some of those days, they were all on at the same time. And I said, God, I want you more than I want this. Essentially, that's all it came down to. And I know that this is something simple. I challenge myself on the hard stuff all the time. So for me, this was a test for me. This was something that I really, really want to do, but I'm going to challenge my flesh, right? I'm going to discipline my flesh that when I want to, I'm going to say, flesh, nope, you're not doing it today. And that's all I'm saying. Is to be able to find those areas, narrow down those areas that your flesh says, oh, I want to do it. Even if it's something that's simple. I know I'm going to mess y'all up with this, some of y'all. Even if it's as simple as, I've been working out this week, I've been doing real good, I'm going to treat myself this weekend. I'm going to go get a donut. I'm going to go get ice cream. I'm going to go get some cookies. I'm going to treat myself this weekend. Even if it's something as simple as that, just to be able to practice discipline and say, you know what? I'm not going to do it. Something as simple as you go to work and you didn't even know, but they're going to be like, you know what? Today is Employee Appreciation Day, and they got a whole spread. And then you challenge your flesh just to say, you know what? I just want to see how strong I am. I'm not going to do it today, right? That will give you a very good indication of how strong your willpower is, of how strong your spirit is, of how much more you want God than things of the flesh. And you might say, well, Pastor Ty, well, what does that have to do with anything? Me turning down a donut, what does that have to do with me being holy? You know, I'm not out smoking. I'm not out drinking. I'm not out sleeping with people outside of marriage. Yeah, I'm not, you know, I'm not a lesbian. I'm not doing all this stuff that everybody else is doing. What does me turning down a donut have to do with that? This is all I'm saying. Find something your flesh desires and say no to that thing. And essentially what you're doing is sanctifying yourself. You are creating space. You're saying, I'm separating myself from the thing that my flesh wants. And that makes you sensitive to the presence of God. And what you notice is your willpower becomes much stronger. Then the things that you really, really want. Then when you find yourself in those tempting moments, when you find yourself when your flesh really wants to act out, what you'll start to notice is over time, you might still act out a little bit if it's, you know, if it's still fresh. But you start to notice you weren't as angry as you were before. You start to notice that your recovery time came down a little bit less. It used to take you a whole day to get over that argument, but now it only takes a couple hours. It used to take you an hour, but now I'm over it almost instantaneously. And what happens the more we walk in that purity, you'll start to notice that the more sensitive you become to the presence of God, to where you could be minding your business, kids screaming in the background, the TV volume is all the way up because husband don't know how to watch the TV unless it's all the way at the max volume, right? It's chaos and noise all around you. Somebody felt that. It's all around you, but you can still hear that still small voice even in chaos. I'm telling y'all something that I know. Being at work where you feel like, well, I can't go in my prayer closet because I'm on the clock. I can't steal away to the bathroom because I already took my break. And being able to be on the clock, sitting behind the register, sitting behind the desk, maybe even on a phone call with a customer, you're hearing what they're saying, but you're hearing the voice of God at the same time. And that sensitivity comes with you walking in purity. And that purity only comes with separation. You separating yourself from the things that your flesh wants and the things that your flesh desires. This is not a thing where you go to somebody else and you say, you need to deny your flesh because you walking in that flesh today. This is not a thing where you need to walk up to somebody and say, you messed up today. You did this today. You in the flesh. You need to be holy. This is an internal thing. This is something that I need to look at myself in the mirror and say, you know what? I don't like how you acted out today. I don't like how frustrated you became today. I don't like how angry you got today. And talk to yourself in the mirror and then say, you know what? Because you acted out today, you're not going to eat lunch. I know y'all laughing, but some of y'all like, yeah, Pastor Ty, you done lost it now. I've told myself plenty of times, you know what? You going to act like that? All right, you ain't watching TV today. Just like you would punish a child, just like if you were a teacher and you would punish those children in the classroom, you say, you know what, you're not getting a treat today because you just been acting a fool all day long. That's the same way that you need to punish your flesh. Even the word of God says to put every thought into subjection that would try to exalt itself above God. Right? And so we take those thoughts, we take those emotions, we take those feelings, we take those actions that the flesh will try to act out in, and we say, you know, because you did this, I'm gonna punish you. There's a penalty to you acting out. You're not gonna eat. You're not gonna watch TV. You're not going to the birthday party today. You're not staying up late to watch the game tonight. Matter of fact, we're gonna have ice cream later. You're not getting it. That's how you have to talk to yourself, to punish your flesh. But the main goal at the end of the day is, God, I want you more than I want anything else. And if I can deny myself, then nothing is impossible. For me, I'm going to let y'all in on something. For me, if I can wake up when my alarm clock goes off the first time, if I can set my alarm 15, 20, 30 minutes earlier than what it's supposed to go off, Pastor Ty would be doing pretty good. But I'll be honest with you, that's been a challenge lately, especially when you have a boy. Lately, I haven't been calling him by his name. I've just been calling him the boy. Lately, when you have a Tyler who wakes up consistently every day at 5:30 in the morning. So in order to beat him in the morning, that means I'm gonna have to wake up at 5 and probably going to sleep at night closer to 11 in midnight, so maybe getting 4 or 5 hours of sleep. I'm be honest with y'all. That hurts. Pastor Ty, but you so spiritual. You should be able to do that. I thought all pastors do that. Y'all don't never get no sleep. You know, you always wake up before the sun comes up. I'm going to tell y'all, that's tough. Why I always do this to myself? See, I did this last week. I put my foot in my mouth. I was joking around about not watching football, not watching basketball, and then God convicted me on it and was like, that's what you're going to do. Maybe I shouldn't say it that way. Y'all don't hold me accountable. This week, I am going to challenge myself to wake up. Let me think about what I want to say. Because after it's out, this week, I am going to challenge myself to wake up. Thank you for the encouragement, sis. I'm going to challenge myself to wake up 30 minutes before the boy is up. Before the boy. This week I'm going to challenge myself to wake up 30 minutes before the boy is up. And I already told y'all, consistently he's up at 5:36. Even at the very latest, he's up at 6. I'm going to do this week. Not for y'all. I'm not doing this so I can be a better preacher. I'm not doing this so I can appear to be spiritual before people. I'm doing this because I desire God more than I desire sleep. Is that tough? You know. Oh, you already know. That's tough. That's tough. 2 things that we value as adults: sleep and food. 2 things you get excited about as an adult: sleep and food. If I show up to your birthday party and you got food, we good. If I show up to your celebration and you got food, we good. If I come help you move and you got food, we good, right? If I can get a nap on a Sunday afternoon, bruh, like, it probably ain't no money in the world that can substitute that. Like, if you can give me a nap every day, I'm good. 2 things that we cherish. And if you know what? I'm glad that y'all talking back to me. Because all those things y'all talking back means that means something to y'all too. I'm going to challenge y'all to do it too. I'm going to challenge yourself either in the area of food or sleep this week. That's my challenge to y'all. That wasn't even the plan. I didn't even plan to challenge y'all this week. But since y'all talking back to me, I'm going to just go ahead and give y'all that. This week, I am challenging you to challenge yourself in the area of either food or sleep. And I'm going to give you the choice. And whichever one is the biggest one, because I know both of them are a big deal. So whichever one you choose is good. Whichever one means most to you, I'm going to challenge you to challenge yourself in one of those 2 areas. I'm not saying to go a whole day without eating. I'm not saying to go the whole week without eating. I'm not saying not to take your medication or your medicine if that's what you're supposed to be doing. Trust me, I'm not saying any of those things. I'm saying even if it is as simple as you saying, today I am not going to eat lunch. I'm going to eat breakfast, but I'm not going to eat lunch. If you're the type of person that doesn't eat breakfast, don't try to say, oh, today I'm not going to eat breakfast, because you don't do that anyway, right? It's not one of those things, all right? If you're the type of person that's already getting up early, then maybe you should challenge yourself in food, or you should push yourself to get up earlier. Or if you can't get up early for whatever restrictions or you work overnight, then maybe you should stay up a little bit later. Challenge yourself in one of these two areas, either food or sleep, right? And this is the one thing that I can guarantee you, and I saw it happen in my life this week. I told my wife just yesterday, I said, you know what? Something amazing happened this week. Today is Sunday. I'm done with my challenge. I can go and watch basketball and football today. But here's the thing. I've not even thought about it. I've not even been pressed about it. She was laughing because she was saying, oh, I bet you on Sunday after church, you're going to get on your phone and you're going to be trying to watch all the highlights from the last week. And I told her, like, no, I don't even have that desire. I don't miss it. I'm going to watch it today. I'm going to watch it today. But I've not missed it. And that's an amazing thing that happens when you pursue something greater than your problem. When you pursue the presence of God, is that you don't even miss it. You don't even desire it anymore. You find yourself not even focusing on the things that used to distract you before because you're focused in on the thing that can provide those areas that you've been longing for. I think we'll go ahead and finish there. That's your challenge for today. If all you guys could just stand to your feet and we'll get ready to pray. You have your challenge for today. And this is not a thing where I'm going to be checking up on y'all. I don't know, I might. But I that's not the plan. Because just like Joshua said to the people, he said, sanctify yourselves. Because I think he understood something similar to what Jesus prayed when he was praying to God, was sanctify them by your word. Sanctify them with your truth. Because if I sanctify you, if I walk around and lay hands on you and I say, be pure, be holy, right? You're going to walk away with no conviction. My conviction is not enough for you. If you don't have conviction for yourself, Pastor Ty can't follow you around everywhere. And even though God is all-knowing and he sees everything, he's not going to walk around smacking you on your head and your wrist every time you do something wrong. You have to have an internal conviction. And the way that internal conviction becomes more sensitive is by you sanctifying yourself, creating space between you and sin. And you'll start to notice that God's voice will become more and more clear. You'll start to notice that small things that didn't convict you before will begin to convict you now. You'll start to notice that if you're walking up the street and you pull your chapstick out of your pocket, but a wrapper from candy falls on the ground, you won't be able to walk past it anymore. For some of y'all, that was just nothing. I was like, who cares? That's what they're there for. That's what they get paid for. They're going to clean it up. But it'll convict you. Now, when you're in the store and you're picking through clothes and then that shirt falls off the hanger, it'll convict you to just walk away and leave it on the floor. You'll pick it up and you'll put it back on the hanger. I'm giving y'all natural examples. There's a sensitivity that comes with holiness and sanctification, and you'll notice the more you do it, the stronger and stronger it grows. I might lose some of y'all on this. To the point where you'll go to the bank, your request or withdrawal, they'll put more money in the envelope that you asked for, and your balance still says the amount that you asked for. But you'll send that money back and let them know that they put too much in there. I knew I was going to lose y'all on that one. But it gets to a point in your holiness walk where the things that didn't convict you before now convict you. Where you're at work and you see money laying on the floor, and instead of just pocketing that money, you'll at least go around the office and say, hey, did anybody? Oh, nobody? I tried. Right? But that holiness will begin to convict you, and it will begin to grow more and more. If you don't want to be close to God, if you don't want that conviction, if you don't want to be corrected, there's not a whole lot I can tell you. This is something you have to desire for yourself. Just like he said, sanctify yourselves, separate yourself, and then tomorrow God will do wonders. Then God will begin to separate you and you'll see the growth. Let's pray. Father, I thank you for each individual in this building, each individual streaming live. Father, I thank you that your Holy Spirit's work of transformation will begin in us this morning, and begin to do something fresh, and begin to do something new, and to begin to do something in us that we could not do in and of our own power. For we're not holy just because we're taking measures to do things in our lives. We're holy because of your grace. We're holy because of your mercy, because you call us holy. We are the righteousness of God. But help us to take those natural measures that we need to take to separate ourselves from sin, so that you can create that distinction between us and the world. So that when revival begins to happen in the earth, include us in that revival, God. We're following after your presence, and no longer will we focus in on our problems. We love you, Father, and we thank you that you're doing it in our personal lives.